You know, my grandmother has been amazing throughout. You know, my father, my brother, Kate, and all the rest of the
that way, but also then to go and have friends over for dinner, or to go to his family for tea, or...
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's union once captivated the world like a fairy tale reborn. It had all the makings of a new era, a British prince breaking centuries of convention to marry a biracial American actress who had built her career on grit, resilience, and heart. Their 2018 wedding was not just a global spectacle, it was a symbolic reset, a moment that promised to usher the monarchy into the 21st century with grace, inclusivity, and modern charm. They were, in many eyes, the monarchy's last hope to stay relevant in a world that was quickly losing patience with the old ways. But behind the glamour, behind the curated photos, and the carefully measured interviews, something darker was beginning to brew. By January 2020, the world watched in shock as the couple announced their decision to step back from royal duties. It wasn't just a resignation from titles and responsibilities, it was a declaration of war against an institution they claimed had failed to protect them. The press had been ruthless. Meghan had become the tabloid punching bag of a nation, painted in headlines that twisted her every word, her every expression, into something sinister. Harry, still haunted by the memory of his mother's tragic death, under the relentless glare of the paparazzi, made a choice. He chose his wife. He chose freedom. Or so it seemed. In those early days of their post-royal life, it looked like they were finally in control. They moved to California, signed blockbuster deals with Netflix and Spotify, launched their Archewell Foundation, and began telling their story on their terms. To many, it was inspiring a modern couple escaping a rigid system and reclaiming their voices. But cracks soon began to appear beneath the polished surface. Rumors of growing tension within the marriage started to trickle through the same media pipelines they had tried to escape. The press that once obsessed over their romance now seemed obsessed with its possible collapse. At first, it was subtle. Analysts dissected body language from joint interviews. Reporters highlighted awkward pauses or unspoken glances. Then came the whispers from palace insiders and Hollywood circles, claims of disagreements, frustration, distance. Meghan's drive was described as relentless, her ambition as laser-focused. Harry, once a soldier, a prince, a public figure with a defined purpose, seemed adrift in comparison. And in the echo chamber of speculation, every solo appearance, every missed event, every vague quote began to feel like a clue. A breadcrumb in a trail leading away from the happily ever after. The media, which had once mocked them for leaving, now hunted them for the unraveling. And strangely, their silence on the matter only added fuel to the fire. Because in the world they inhabited where every movement is measured, every absence noticed, every word analyzed, silence is never neutral. It's loud, and it speaks volumes. As the narrative of a fairy tale begins to collapse under the weight of expectation, betrayal, and two vastly different personal evolutions, the question lingers in the air like smoke. Is this just turbulence, or is it the beginning of the end? Because the signs, though scattered, are no longer subtle. They're everywhere, and they're impossible to ignore. As the fairy tale narrative fades, let's delve into the pivotal moments that hint at a royal unraveling. When King Charles III was crowned in May 2023, the world turned its gaze toward Westminster Abbey. It was more than just a coronation. It was a moment soaked in symbolism, a spectacle of power, legacy, and monarchy reborn. Every major figure from the royal family stood in their carefully assigned place. Every eye in the nation looked to the balcony, to the procession, to the throne. And yet, one figure was missing. Meghan Markle was nowhere to be seen. While Prince Harry made a brief appearance alone, his wife remained thousands of miles away, in California. The official reason? It was their son Archie's 4th birthday. But even those unfamiliar with royal protocol knew something didn't sit right. Royal events are rarely just ceremonial, they're loaded with meaning, expectation, and coded messages. A spouse's presence, or absence, sends ripples through the court of public opinion. Meghan's choosing not to attend such a historic moment wasn't seen as a scheduling conflict. It was interpreted as a statement, a silent, deliberate dissociation from the crown Harry once belonged to. It wasn't the first time she'd stepped away from the royal stage, but it was the most public and the most symbolic. The optics were undeniable. The king being crowned while his daughter-in-law stayed behind, across an ocean, in quiet celebration of a child's birthday. To some, it felt justifiable motherhood over monarchy, but to others, it looked like defiance. Even insiders close to the palace admitted the move stung. One source revealed that Meghan's absence was not only expected, but accepted, adding that her presence may have stirred more drama than calm. Still, the narrative quickly shifted. Was this absence really about avoiding media frenzy? Or was it something far more personal? Analysts speculated that Meghan didn't want to subject herself to a frosty reception, that tensions behind closed doors remained unresolved. And worse, some began to whisper that Meghan had mentally exited not just the firm, but the marriage too. Publications across the globe ran with the headline, "Why Meghan Really Skipped the Coronation." Was it truly just Archie's birthday? Or was it a crack widening in the foundation of her relationship with Harry? After all, Harry was there, albeit for only 28 hours, flying in and out with the urgency of someone fulfilling a duty rather than celebrating a father's crowning achievement. Notably, he didn't linger for the post-ceremony events, didn't join the family on the Buckingham Palace balcony, and didn't appear to engage with his brother or stepmother. Meghan's absence wasn't just physical, it became a gravitational pull for all the speculation the royal family had hoped to avoid. Critics pointed out that royal spouses traditionally attend major events as a sign of unity, regardless of personal conflicts. And Meghan had once stood proudly beside Harry at major public moments, from weddings to funerals, weathering scrutiny with poise. This time, she chose distance. And that distance didn't just separate her from the royal institution. It began to hint at a widening emotional distance between her and Harry. Some questioned whether the symbolic fracture between Meghan and the crown had begun to manifest in her personal life as well. Others argued that Meghan staying in California wasn't just about Archie's birthday. It was about control, about reclaiming her autonomy in a system that once tried to strip it away. Whatever the motive, the damage was done. The coronation, meant to signal unity and continuity, instead reignited whispers of separation. If Harry and Meghan were a team, why weren't they showing up as one when it mattered most? And if Meghan was ready to remove herself from the monarchy's narrative, was she quietly rewriting her own future without Harry in it? Beyond royal events, personal gestures and expressions have also come under the microscope. Meghan Markle's exaggerated curtsy in the Netflix docuseries wasn't just a passing moment of humor, it became a lightning rod for controversy. What was intended as a light-hearted anecdote about meeting Queen Elizabeth II quickly turned into a public relations disaster. Meghan, smiling as she mocked the traditional royal curtsy with a dramatic bow, ignited a firestorm. And sitting next to her, Prince Harry didn't laugh. He didn't smile. He stared forward, his jaw tight, his face unreadable. In that split second, the tension between heritage and rebellion, between loyalty and self-expression, played out in front of millions of viewers around the globe. For some, it was an innocent joke, an American actress poking fun at the stiff formality of royal life. But for others, it was sacrilege. The monarchy isn't just a family. It's a symbol, a centuries-old institution built on tradition, reverence, and ritual. And to act out the curtsy, especially in the context of a tell-all documentary already critical of the crown, was seen as crossing a line. British media went into overdrive. Headlines used words like insulting, tasteless, and shameful. Royal supporters labeled the move as tone-deaf, claiming it wasn't just disrespectful to the Queen, but to the very idea of monarchy itself. But the backlash didn't stop there. The camera caught something far more telling: Harry's body language. Experts broke down the moment frame by frame. His posture, his expression, the subtle shift in his eyes. It was discomfort, they said, embarrassment, even regret. For a man who had lived and breathed royal protocol since birth, watching his wife mock a foundational tradition didn't sit easily. And for viewers already questioning the strength of their union, it was a red flag. Not because of the joke itself, but because of the way Harry responded to it, or didn't. What the world saw wasn't just a cultural misstep, it was a glimpse into a deeper clash of values. Meghan, free-spirited and unbound by British norms, saw the moment as humorous. Harry, bound by years of inherited obligation, seemed torn. That tension, subtle yet piercing, cast a shadow over their story. Was this merely a clash of personalities or something more profound? A sign that, behind closed doors, they weren't always aligned in how they viewed the world they had left behind? The curtsy scene was more than just a viral clip. It became a cultural flashpoint. For critics, it reinforced the belief that Meghan never fully respected the crown or its customs. For supporters, it was a brave act of honesty, exposing the absurdity of outdated rituals. But for those watching the dynamics between Harry and Meghan, it was a quiet, uncomfortable pause in an otherwise carefully choreographed narrative. A moment that peeled back the glossy surface and exposed something raw, something unresolved. Because, if a simple gesture could cause this much division, what did it say about the foundation of their bond? Was the laughter staged? Was the silence rehearsed? Or was this the first visible crack in a marriage already under extraordinary pressure? The answers weren't clear, but the questions refused to go away. While public appearances stir controversies, their professional paths tell another story. From joint ventures to solo endeavors, the Sussexes' professional trajectories seem to be charting different courses, and it's happening faster than anyone expected. In the early days of their post-royal chapter, Meghan and Harry moved in lockstep. Together, they launched Archewell, signed blockbuster deals with Netflix and Spotify, and presented themselves as a unified force for social change. The narrative was clear. This was a couple rewriting the rules on their terms. But behind the glossy headlines and high-profile appearances, something began to shift. Slowly, subtly, they started showing up in different places, for different reasons, with different goals. And now, in 2025, the gap between their professional lives is no longer subtle, it's becoming glaringly obvious. Meghan has leaned hard into reinvention. Her latest venture, a lifestyle brand known as Ever, has quickly become a cornerstone of her identity. From wellness products to home decor, it's not just a business, it's a declaration. It signals independence, taste, and self-reliance. And the Netflix series With Love, Meghan took that even further. Intimate, carefully curated, and unmistakably her voice, the series positioned Meghan as more than a duchess. She was now a media mogul in the making. But for all its polish, what stood out most wasn't what was included, it was what was missing. Harry's presence was barely felt. A few appearances, a couple of lines, but otherwise, it was Meghan's world, and she didn't seem to need a co-star. Meanwhile, Harry has doubled down on what has always been his passion, the Invictus Games. His dedication is unwavering, his presence at events consistent, his speeches heartfelt. The Games, designed to honor wounded veterans through sport, represent the very essence of the man he once was in uniform. Dutiful, grounded, and connected to purpose. But in Vancouver, at the 2025 event, something was different. Meghan was there, briefly. She smiled, waved, offered her support. And then she left early, flying back to California before the Games concluded. It wasn't just a scheduling issue, it was a decision, a choice, one that didn't go unnoticed. Commentators quickly picked up on the new dynamic. Separate red carpets, separate interviews, separate goals. For a couple once inseparable, at least in the public eye, this divergence was impossible to ignore. And while it's natural for two ambitious individuals to follow their own paths, this wasn't just about ambition. This was about direction. Meghan's brand is rooted in individuality and glamour. Harry's is built on service and remembrance. At one time, those values overlapped. But now, they seem to be pulling in opposite directions. It's not the distance that speaks loudest. It's how naturally they seem to be adjusting to it. As if, somewhere along the way, they stopped trying to walk in sync and started walking alone. And while fans debate whether this is evolution or erosion, one truth lingers beneath the surface. When careers split this cleanly, hearts sometimes follow. Because when public alignment fades, what happens in private rarely stays untouched beyond. Careers, subtle cues in titles, and social media hint at deeper shifts. In the digital age, even a social media bio can speak volumes. For someone like Meghan Markle, whose every move, word, and wardrobe choice is scrutinized, the smallest detail online becomes a potential headline. And in early 2025, eagle-eyed fans and royal watchers noticed something that seemed subtle. but felt seismic. When Meghan returned to Instagram to promote her brand and personal projects, the way she signed off wasn't as the Duchess of Sussex, as tradition might dictate. Instead, she styled her name as Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, a format historically associated with royal divorcees. That quiet shift sent shockwaves across tabloids, forums, and royal commentary circles. Because in the monarchy, titles aren't just formalities, they're messages. This wasn't the first time the title had sparked confusion or speculation. In royal protocol, a divorced woman of noble standing often retains her title, but drops the HRH and places her first name before the title Diana, Princess of Wales, being the most iconic example. So when Meghan adopted that same styling, many wondered, was it a branding choice or was it foreshadowing? The palace had not issued any official change. Meghan had not publicly commented on it, but that's the nature of digital cues, they're silent, but not invisible. The media pounced. Analysts debated whether it was a deliberate nod to independence, a preparation for an official separation, or simply a clever way to keep the Duchess brand intact while distancing herself from the royal machine. Some argued it was a legal technicality. Others insisted it was a personal signal to the world. And in the court of public opinion, perception is everything. For supporters, it was empowering. Meghan reclaiming her identity, choosing how she would be addressed, breaking free from outdated royal constraints. For critics, it was strategic distancing, laying the groundwork for a narrative in which Harry, once again, is left behind. But this wasn't just about a name, it was about identity. Meghan's online presence had shifted dramatically since her royal exit. No longer sharing platforms with Harry, no longer promoting shared projects. Her new Instagram was bright, polished, and unmistakably solo. The themes? Lifestyle, wellness, creativity, personal, not political, intimate, not institutional. And just like that, the divide between we and me widened in plain sight. Because online branding is never just about business. It's a mirror of who you are or who you're becoming. The pattern was emerging. Joint ventures were dwindling. Appearances were more independent. And now, the title once shared with pride was being restructured in silence. It was elegant, controlled, almost surgical. But that's what made it so powerful. It wasn't a scream, it was a whisper with weight. While neither Meghan nor Harry had confirmed any rift, their digital footprints began to tell a different story. In a world where public figures carefully curate every post, every word, every punctuation mark, this wasn't oversight, it was intention. And as the world dissected what a 7-word Instagram bio could mean, another reality began to surface, that maybe the transition wasn't coming. Maybe it had already begun. While digital footprints provide hints, physical distances tell their own tales. The physical spaces between Harry and Meghan are becoming more pronounced and more difficult to ignore. Once inseparable in both public and private life, their every appearance used to be a masterclass in unity. They held hands on red carpets, gave joint interviews, launched causes together. But in recent months, that harmony has begun to fracture in ways too consistent to dismiss as coincidence. Meghan now arrives at events alone, or doesn't appear at all. Take the Invictus Games Harry's passion project, his pride. Meghan attended, but briefly. She offered support, smiled for the cameras, then left before the event concluded. It was a detail many missed until it happened again, and again. The absences became patterns, quiet ones, almost politely arranged. A missed trip here, an early departure there. No arguments in public, no dramatic outbursts, just growing silence between appearances. And then came reports from insiders suggesting that time apart was no longer limited to professional obligations. Harry, sources claimed, had begun spending extended periods in London for charity work and family matters. Meghan, meanwhile, remained rooted in California, focused on her business and media empire. Two lives once tightly wound were now spinning in separate directions. Observers close to the couple describe their current rhythm as logistically functional, a term that says everything and nothing at the same time. It means the schedules are managed, the children are cared for. But the intimacy, the shared laughter behind closed doors, that's where the questions grow louder. Because emotional distance rarely starts with a decision. It creeps in slowly, as careers diverge, as routines drift, as silent moments stretch too long without being filled. And when two people spend more time away than together, it's not just geography. It's something far more dangerous: emotional withdrawal. Psychologists often point to physical separation as a precursor to deeper relational issues. Not because distance itself is damaging, but because of what it can cover up. When proximity fades, so does spontaneous connection. Those little moments that keep a relationship alive, shared glances, quiet talks, unplanned dinners, they vanish. And in high-pressure lives like Harry and Meghan's, once those threads are broken, they're rarely retied. Experts say this kind of separation, particularly when paired with rising solo ambitions, often reflects a subconscious shift, from building a future together to quietly preparing to live apart. There's no official announcement, no visible collapse. But that's the most unsettling part. The absence of drama doesn't mean all is well. Sometimes, it's the most measured silences that hide the deepest divides. And for Harry and Meghan, the growing chasm between them is no longer theoretical. It's measurable. In miles, in missed appearances, in rooms left empty longer than they used to be, and in how easily they now seem to live their lives without the other beside them. Beyond actions, words spoken and written offer profound insights into their relationship dynamics. Rumors swirl about Meghan penning her own narrative, potentially without Harry, and the implications are more unsettling than they first appear. Whispers from publishing circles suggest that Meghan's team has quietly floated the idea of a deeply personal memoir, one not tethered to royal life, but focused instead on life after Harry. There's no official title, no confirmed publisher, and certainly no statement. But in the world of celebrity memoirs, even a whisper usually signals something real brewing beneath the surface. And if true, it wouldn't just be a literary event, it would be a seismic moment in their story, perhaps even the final chapter. Insiders hint that the book would center around personal transformation, motherhood, career reinvention, and emotional survival. Meghan has always been strategic with her storytelling, choosing moments and platforms that maximize narrative control. But the decision to go solo with a memoir, especially after the explosive impact of Spare, would speak volumes without saying a word. Because Spare wasn't just Harry's side of the royal feud, it was a public catharsis, a therapy session in hardcover. Meghan, in contrast, has stayed measured, restrained. But a solo memoir would signal something different, something unfiltered, and perhaps irreversible. Critics are already speculating on what such a book would reveal. Would it include her thoughts on leaving the royal family? Her struggles with public scrutiny? Her private frustrations with palace life? Or would it take a bolder step documenting the emotional toll of building a life with Harry, only to see it evolve into something unrecognizable? If the book moves forward, it won't just offer a narrative, it will offer a perspective. And perspectives, when unshared, can become declarations, especially when they arrive without the co-signature of a once unified partner. The media reaction has been immediate and fierce. Headlines range from hopeful to scandalized. Some paint it as a move toward independence, applauding Meghan for reclaiming her truth. Others interpret it as a precursor to something more permanent, a gentle prelude to an official separation. The comparisons to Spare are unavoidable, but where Harry's memoir dissected his past, Meghan's would dissect her future. And perhaps, where Harry wrote to reconcile with the world, Meghan may write to reconcile with herself. Publishing experts note that this wouldn't just be about words on a page. It would be about power, influence, closure, and perhaps even quiet revenge. After all, narratives are currency, and Meghan knows that better than most. If she's crafting her own without Harry's involvement, it raises one haunting question. Is she preparing to tell a story that doesn't include him anymore? Because behind every unconfirmed rumor is a calculated leak. And behind every leak, a decision waiting to be announced. Whether the memoir materializes or not, the intent behind it has already left its mark. And for those watching the unraveling of a once indomitable partnership, this potential memoir isn't just another project, it could be the most honest confession yet. As narratives unfold, the question remains: are these signs of a temporary rift or a permanent parting? The clues are scattered like fragments, each one seemingly small, but together they paint a picture far more complex than anyone could have imagined. From Meghan's absence at King Charles's coronation to the infamous Netflix curtsy, from diverging professional pursuits to subtle changes in titles and digital signatures, each moment felt like a thread being quietly pulled. A thread that, over time, began to unravel the carefully woven tapestry of their public image. No fights on camera, no scandalous revelations, just space, distance, silence. And yet, that silence now echoes louder than any headline. They haven't issued a statement. No divorce filings, no official announcements. But perhaps that's precisely what keeps the world so fixated. The ambiguity, the constant balancing act between appearing united and acting apart. It's a tension many high-profile couples endure, but for Harry and Meghan, the stakes are uniquely royal. Their relationship has never been private. It's been scrutinized from every possible angle. Their love story dissected by millions. Their choices judged under a microscope. Every pause, every movement, every glance analyzed for subtext. It's no wonder that fractures, if they exist, would form quietly, carefully, strategically. But behind every royal myth is a very human reality. And reality doesn't always fit into fairy tales. The weight of legacy, identity, expectation. These aren't just abstract burdens. They're relentless. Meghan entered a centuries-old institution not built to accommodate difference, innovation, or independence. Harry walked away from the only life he'd ever known. And while they tried to build something new together, the question was never whether they loved each other. It was whether that love could survive the pressure to be everything for everyone. In truth, the public's obsession with their every move says more about us than it does about them. We hunger for icons, for scandals, for closure. We project ideals onto couples and punish them when they don't live up to the fantasy. But Harry and Meghan are not symbols. They're two people navigating fame, trauma, ambition, and family, all while raising children in a world that refuses to let them evolve quietly. So if their paths are now parting, even slightly, it may not be betrayal or failure. It may simply be the price of trying to live authentically under a spotlight that never turns off. And yet, despite all the signs, we don't know the full story. Maybe we never will, because in the space between fact and speculation lies a truth only they can define. What we do know is this: the story isn't over. Not yet. Not even close. Whether it's a reunion, a reinvention, or a quiet farewell, what comes next may rewrite the narrative we thought we knew. As the world watches and waits, the story of Harry and Meghan continues to captivate and confound. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.